So welcome to everybody. We will wait still some few minutes before starting when people are still arriving, you know.
Huh?
Yeah. Okay. So today's talk will be in Chinese. We will have a simultaneous translation. No, I'm joking. All right. Good. But where are you, Caroline?
I'm in China. I'm in Hangzhou.
Hong Kong. Okay, good. All right.
Hi, Kata. Oi, Júlio.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here, my beautiful.
Wow.
Hi,
It's a
Caroline.
pleasure
How are
to
you?
Good. How are you? Oh, congratulations for talk yesterday, Júlio.
Thank you very much.
So I have some VPN issues here, so I will talk very slowly. And in case it stops, please just let me know. You can interrupt me.
Now it's working. I didn't know that there was problem with Zoom in China, so we have to check the situation
Now
for
it
the
can.
future because if people in China cannot see us because of Zoom, maybe we'll use another a tool for the future. Let's see.
Yeah.
But well, today we will use Zoom, and this is the last session of the webinar of this year. I am here with Assis. We are the chair of the organizer of the webinar. And next year, I will say more about that at the end of the session, but I will already say a few words about that. So next year, we will go on. The idea is that in January, we will have a special session for the World Logic Day about logic and religion. We don't know exactly yet what will be the day and what exactly will be the topic. I mean, I think it will be a general discussion about the relation between logic and religion to start the year. And that's it. So we are very glad today to have Caroline Ting speaking now, sure. And she she is doing postdoc research. She did a PhD in art, philosophy of art, and now she's doing a different kind of research. Especially now, Caroline, you told me that you were investigating the culture, indigenous culture of Taiwan. So maybe you can say a few words about that because I know I guess few people know about that. But now, right now, you are in continental China. She's spending 2 months in Hong Kong at the City University of Hong Kong. That's right? Yeah. Doing research.
Now, right now, today, I am in Hangzhou. I can explain everything.
All right. So I will give you the place to speak. So go on, and we will. So you present your talk, and after your talk, as a chairman, I will organize a discussion. So please, thank you very much to be here. It's very late at night in China, and we see that you are still awake.
Thank you so much, Professor Zheng, for this very kind introduction. Let me close one of the things I have here. I have said before, I have some issues with VPN here, so if my connection stops, please just interrupt me. I am super grateful for my friends that are here with me. And I'm also very happy that I am right now almost celebrating my birthday with you. So in 50 minutes, I will turn 37. So thank you so much for having this special occasion with me online. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see?
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about Mozi's philosophy of universal love and analogical reasoning. And to start, we're going to have some background of how these ideas have flourished in China. It was a time called the Golden Age of Chinese philosophy, where many schools of Chinese philosophy have flourished because at that time there were many competitions and thoughts, thinkers, trying to bring new ideas at the same time that China was all divided into the warring states period. So it was maybe something similar to how we can find in Europe nowadays in terms of several independent states once used to claim as part of the same dynasty, but then they were competing against each other. And because of these very turbulent times, several thinkers were trying to sell their ideas of prosperity and how to better govern. So in China, the most famous paradoxes are ascribed to philosophers associated to the logicians or the school of names. They were this diverse group of the Warring States period, roughly the 5th century until the 2nd century BC, who shared an interest in language, logic, and metaphysics. They were often compared to the Greek sophists, and also because they were many times employed as lawyers. As we said, each school came up with their own position and competed for new ideas, giving rise to this golden age of Chinese philosophy. And what is interesting is that many of us might not realize that our Western dialectical tradition is paralleled by these dialectical traditions in the East. At the same time, we have flourishing ideas with Confucius, Buddha, and Socrates living at the same time. So it is often said because of this that the ancient Greece, that is called the classical period, was the cradle of Western civilization, and the same is said for the Warring States period in Chinese civilization. Both philosophical traditions also seem to have developed their first recognized paradoxes, like Zeno also, and in China we had the legalist Han Feizi, and Professor Bizot has presented in several of his conferences this concept of contradiction in China that is represented by a spear against a shield. So all of these thought about contradiction in logic also emerged in China at the same time. And as Professor Bizot has stated, we know with these ideas, these two characters, an idea of combat. These two characters, they come from a story that illustrates two incompatible propositions, which is that both cannot be true, although they can be false at the same time. So in the plot, Han Feizi follows Aristotle's law of non-contradiction. So in this time, we have these 100 schools of thought, and here we have a list of the 6 most important ones. The school of names, which we have talked about, the Yin Yang school, the Confucianism, the Taoism, and here in this particular talk, we're going to talk about the Mohism, and we also have the legalism. You might have noticed that the Confucianism does not have the name Confucius in the Chinese transliteration. You see, Ru literally means intellectual. So it is talking about the school of intellectuals, not the school of Confucius, because this stream of thought existed prior to Confucius' existence. But Moism, you can see there, Mo-jia, it refers to the name of Mozi, or Master Mo. Also, we have to mention that Huishi was a member of this diverse class of intellectuals known as the dialecticians. They were figures associated with the school of names, founded by Deng Xi, who was China's earliest renowned lawyer and rhetorician, who may have served as an official there. And these dialecticians were typically employed as guest scholars, teachers, or political advisors, concealing rulers throughout the many cities and that were at the time in this pre-imperial China. These dialecticians used to make puzzling, preposterous statements which go against our ordinary intuitions, such as the heavens are as low as the earth, mountains are on the same level as marshes, creatures coming into life are creatures ceasing to be alive. So it's really counterintuitive, and they're meant to really make us think. One of the most famous is Gongsun. He was a member of the logicians, and he was famous for his statement and argument for a horse is not a horse. His point of view is that the notion of a white horse comes from something which describes color, and horse, which describes shape. So we have the conjunction between two categories, which is not the same as the notion which only describes shape. So we see that there is also a development of logic in China. And all this as a background for us to understand our main topic. Here we have universal love, literally, but it may be translated as universal concern or impartial care, because love many times gives us the idea there is feeling, sentiment, passion involved. And it does not only represent the fondness that we have for a person, but actually is more about concern or about the ethics of being impartial, of caring about everybody equally. So these logicians, they may have been considered to have gone into the discussions of concepts in order to support this doctrine. This doctrine comes for our philosopher, Mozi, and as we have said, jian'ai, or universal love, is actually an ethical model in China. And here I put the character that represents this ethical model or law. It's fa. Literally, it means a river. That's why it is the idea of a method that is to be followed. It also represents this mythical animal that can tell the difference between right and wrong and save you from the water. So that's the idea of river, the path that you follow, or this animal that has understanding, it has faculty for judgment. So far, anyone has any question? Everything is understandable? So, a famous sinologist, Chad Hanson, in the chapter of his chapter on Mozi, he writes, he is the most important in the early half of the class. What is interesting now, that people know a lot about the Tao Te Ching, people know a lot about Confucius Analects, but they don't know much about Mozi's writings, although he was so important at this time. And analyzing his thought carefully gives us a more accurate view of the direction of philosophical thought in China. Writing argumentative essays and engaging in philosophical reflection both start with Mozi. That is why he is so important for logicians. He distinguishes between traditional mores and morality proper. He formulates a unique version of utilitarianism, which we are going to talk about, and argues for that theory and for an explicit political theory. He offers an interesting version of a state of nature justification for social organization. And he gives arguments. So this is interesting because most times in Chinese early writings, we don't have consistency. And we don't have consistency because many times the early Chinese writings, they are formulated by different writers. We may have Confucius dialects, but they are actually a compilation of his disciples. Even in Mozi's writings, we don't have just a book written by Master Mo. We have a compilation of his writings and his disciples. But at the first time here, we have arguments. He doesn't just say, you shall not kill. He tries to explain why this is wrong, why this is ethical, why this is not ethical, why this is immoral. But writing during the Warring States period, Mozi was unlike his contemporaries for this reason. He was ardently opposed to the wasteful government spending, and that is why he's considered a precursor of utilitarian thought in China, even if we didn't have this terminology. He tested aggressive foreign wars, but he was a specialist in defensive war and believed government positions should be held by the best for the job. So it's kind of meritocracy, not just for those with familial and political connections. Brian Gordon, another very famous sinologist, he says that it's fair to say that philosophy, in the sense of self-conscious reflection upon modification and defense of one's will, begins with the debate between Conzi, which is Latinized as Confucius, and Mozi. Let's see why. When we see Confucius here on the left side, and we talked about this, the character for him is literati or scholar, because it was actually the religion or the series of methods that were performed by intellectuals before even Confucius existed. And we see that in the characters, we have the component of a person and for rain and sky, which has the idea of a literati that was at the same time capable of performing some rituals with oracle bones, for instance, that would determine whether it would rain or not. So they would understand very important things for agriculture. And we have the class from which Mozi comes from, which is the class of Shi, the knight errant. Can you still see me? Because I saw something about unstable connection here. They were educated gentlemen, they were military specialists, they were also artisans. So many times his metaphors take the ideas of artisan tools. And they were specialists who had lost their official positions and been scattered with the collapse of the feudal system in the latter part of the Zhou dynasty. That's dynasty prior to them, which, as we have said, all these different states, they claimed once to have belonged to this dynasty. So these are the different ideas of love or care for these two classes. For the Zhu or Confucius, we have me in the center of this Venn diagram, and the care or love that I have for my family comes next, and then for the state and for the whole world. So Confucius' idea of love is very centered in the family. Your family should be basis for your education and your love, your concern for others, and you can expand this. But for Mozi, this is wrong. Mozi thinks that you should care for absolutely everybody equally. He is for that considered very idealistic. And for that, he's many times compared with Jesus. Sometimes he's compared with sophists. Because Mozi accepted the natural greatness of love. He understands that it's natural to have fondness for our parents first, but he questioned its ethical value. So this is one of the main ideas of Confucius about love or care, which is centered on the idea of filial piety. And when we see the character for the Chinese character for filial piety, we see that on the top is old, and on the bottom part is son. It's like the son serving his parents. How can we understand these ideas? We have this special anecdote from the Confucius Analects, which is the conversations that Confucius had with his disciples. In this anecdote, the governor of Shi, one of these small states, said to Confucius, "In our village, we have an example of a straight person. When the father stole a ship, the son gave evidence against him." Confucius said, "Among us, in our part of the country, those who are upright are different from this. The father conceals the misconduct of the son, and the son conceals the misconduct of the father. Uprightness is to be found in this." And I would like to later on know your thoughts about this. If you think that the governor of Shi should be right, like would you let people know that your father committed a crime? Or you think Confucius is right? Should you conceal the misconduct of your parent just because he is your parent? So for Mozi, this is wrong. If you think that, if you don't like this idea, you're probably going to like Mozi better. Because for Mozi, there is no difference between one person and another, just like there is no difference between the large and the small states. All are heaven subjects. And when we take this idea of all are heaven subjects, is because Mozi considers heaven as an intelligent entity. So we have for Mozi the universal love or impartial care, instinctive concern, opposed to the Zhu or Confucius view of graded love. So Zhu, Mozi has this exaltation of unity. And when we see the character for jian or universal, it's really like a hand taking flowers together. So unifying things. And this is for Mozi the idea of jian or benevolence or humanity. This character appears for both of them, but they have different ideas of what is to be a human. So this character has changed over time. Sometimes we see as on the upper left corner, a person together with the component for two, which means the interrelation between two people. And sometimes we have the component for two, and below we have what is the particle for heart, which means like two hearts together, or the conversation between two minds. Maybe you can have also the component for 1,000 along with hearts, which represents the idea of 1,000 hearts together. So just like Professor Katarzyna Krivozinska beautifully talks about in her lectures on dialogue, this is the idea of benevolence, several hearts dialoguing with each other or interconnection between people. So both of them actually want the same thing. Both of them want humanness, but they have different views of how to achieve that. Let's see one of the Moses passages here. In what he uses as reasons to care, or the arguments, as we have stated here, he says that these are the misfortunes of the world. when we come to think about the causes of all the calamities, these calamities were the wars. How have they arisen? Have they arisen out of love of others and benefiting others? We must reply that it is not so. Rather, we should say that they have arisen out of hate of others and injuring others. So in this case, Mozi is advocating for his universal love. If we classify those in the world who hate others and injure others, shall we call them discriminating or all embracing? We must say that they are discriminating. So that it's not mutual discrimination, the cause of major calamities of the world. Therefore, the principle of discrimination is wrong. And I decided to highlight in red the conjunctions that Mozi are using to make us lead to his final arguments. So we say this is quite new for that time. Instead of just saying you should love your partners just like you love your family or yourself, he is trying to conduct us into his reasoning. Unlike Confucius, who focuses on cultivating personal character and relationships, it is just like a professor, and this is what connects people. So Mozi was also advocating for this idea, from which they can evaluate what is morally right. Mozi emphasizes on reason-based morality, demands individuals to transcend the human tendencies towards egotism. And that is why his idea of love is not based purely on fondness, but is much more an ethical idea. So by accessing this higher vantage point through the usage of reason and logic, which is that which connects us humans, Mozi believes that individuals can care for others regardless of their affiliations. So that is the idea of you don't put your country first. Everybody for Mozi should be equal, because if you put your own first, the war will never end. Every state is going to put its country first as well. So Mozi has one of his chapters, the name is Promoting or Elevating, depending how you will translate, the worthy or the virtuous. The two characters that are the title of this chapter are Shanjian, as you see there. It talks about the concern for a meritocratic system. It is the idea of putting virtuous people in positions of power instead of people you have affiliations with. When we see the characters for worthy, it conveys the idea of talents and worth in the concrete, because it comes from the component of shell or money, which relates to wealth or fortune, along with the component for minister, along with which makes the component for loyal. So there is this idea that being worthy is to be judged and being evaluated at the same time. Also, Mozi is considered one of the first consequentialists, and that is because he has this utilitarian ethics that we should produce what is the best for the greatest amount of people, and your actions are evaluated according to the consequences. For instance, Confucius used to believe that funerals were very important for filial piety. You should mourn the death of your parents for prolonged time, perhaps for months. And Mozi thinks this is not the real idea of love, because lavish funerals entail burying a great deal of wealth. They used to bury the wealth along with the dead. And prolonged mournings entail prohibiting people from pursuing their vocations for an extended period of time. So it is useless. So these extravagant funerals and prolonged mournings, as we can see here, they are still practiced. And they were a very important practice among the Zhu, the intellectual class. For the same reason, Mozi has some very for us difficult ideas with arts, but we have to understand that he was living in a time that food was scarce. Producing music or arts was like a luxury. So for him, music was wrong, and he has one of the chapters which is condemnation of music. He says, if you ask what is that causes the ruler to neglect the affairs of government and the humble man to neglect his tasks, the answer is music. The idea for Mozi is that you are not producing goods, and instead you are just enjoying music. So for him, all these types of arts are wrong because he had these utilitarian ethics. He was questioning what is the opportunity cost for all of this. And for us, he was also important because he used a lot of analogies. When he criticizes Confucian's atheism, anti-theism, Mozi argues that to hold there are no spirits and learn sacrificial ceremonials, this is comparable to learning the ceremonials of hospitality while there is no gas, or to making fish nets while there are no fish. So this is one of his ways of bringing us to his reasoning, using a lot of analogies. And to conclude, in modern times, Mozi's ideas have been revisited. Mohism has been many times compared to communism because of this idea of equality. Although he was not against social classes, as we have seen, he defends the idea of promoting the worthy. And Mohism, as we have seen, is many times compared to Christianism or Sufism. And I'll finish here, and I would love to discuss with you about these ideas and your thoughts, and if we should promote some of Mozi's ideas nowadays. And thank you so much for sharing with me all this and for your time here. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, thank you very much, Caroline. We will have some question discussion. I see that Martin wants to ask a question. Please, Martin.
Hello, Jian'ai. Hello, Caroline. Hello, everybody. Well, actually, it won't be the same question. I just wanted to tell you that here we are together with a whole group of students of the International Studies in Philosophy at the University of Warsaw. People from also China, from Japan, and Turkey, and other countries. So we all heard to your talk. It was very interesting. Also, that taking the fact into account that we have here a class on actually introductory one, introduction to philosophy, and many interesting concepts that you addressed, like consequentialism or reasoning and reasoning indicators like therefore and so on, were discussed here as some key tools of philosophy. So it was a great opportunity for this group also to see that in Chinese philosophy, from the beginning, it also works. I mean, these tools are universal. So thank you so much. And I hope that perhaps there will be some questions from our students, but I just wanted to introduce it. And finally, Caroline, happy birthday. Thank you. As I know that you today celebrate your birthday. So, and thank you very much for this brilliant talk. As I told you, perhaps there will be questions, but now I just wanted to mention what I did. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you so much, Professor Martin.
Sorry. while we are waiting for the question of your students, there is also a question from Evan Phillips, please. By the way, Caroline, can you stop sharing the screen because the screen is still your PowerPoint is still on the screen.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought I had paused.
Not yet. Yeah. Please,
I'm trying to find because it
no,
says here that
it's not so important, but anyway, now it's good. Please, Evan. Thanks.
Well, I was intrigued by your your mention of there being parallels between the thinking in ancient Greece and some of the thought in China. And in fact, I was immediately reminded of a dialogue, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I can't remember which one right now, that in which it's a Socratic dialogue, presumably by Plato, which raises exactly the question of family obligations versus obligations to the state or the community at large. I believe the example is one in which a slave falls into a ditch and is injured, and the slave owner neglects to properly care for him. And the question is whether the son of the slave owner has an obligation to incriminate his father or not. And it's exactly this dilemma which is being discussed. And another thing that occurs to me, which is, I think, something that historically occurred in a different context and with somewhat different implications, but there is abundant evidence in the Gospels for the conclusion that Jesus really, how should I put it, he disvalues family obligations in favor of obligations that redound to the larger community as a whole. There are a number of places in which he actually says you should hate your own family. So I was curious in part whether you could have anything more you could say about the social and historical context in China in which these sorts of ideas seem to have arisen, because I think certainly in the case of Greece and Palestine, these ideas were intimately connected to larger historical circumstances.
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for your first parallel. I didn't know that there was this very similar anecdote. Could you please remind me which is the passage about the slave?
Which is I can't remember which dialogue it was. I think it was a dialogue on justice, and I'm trying to remember which one. And my aging mind doesn't generate it. It would be easy to look it up.
Oh, Alistair, thank you so much. She's has shared with us. It is the Eufiro. Thank you.
Eufiro. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I've definitely searched for this. And thank you for your question about the background where these ideas emerged. Confucius, he places this great importance on family, but they were both wanting peace for this time of calamity and war. It was a state period. But for Confucius, the education that you have, the love that you have from your parents is parallel to how a minister should, or a king or an emperor should treat his subjects. So an emperor should be for his subject just like a father should be for his son. And for Mozi, these ideas might not have been, he probably didn't subscribe to these ideas. Some say it could be because Mozi didn't have a very good father. So he says, what if your father did not transmit you a good education? What if your father was not conducting ethically? He says there are parents who are ethically immoral as well. And that is why everybody should be equal. And Mozi's idea, Mozi had about 300 followers. His ideas were expanding a lot. So Mencius, another thinker that subscribed to Confucius' thought, and he came about a century after, he was lamenting that Mozi's ideas were in everybody's lips at that time. He was so popular. But after that, with the Han Dynasty, Confucius' ideas prevailed. Another interesting point is condemnation of arts that we also see in the early Greek thought, isn't it? We can compare for different reasons. For Mozi, it was an utilitarian reason because he thought this would be a luxury. But we can also trace some similarities in this regard.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we have some other questions. Arnaud, please.
Hello, Caroline, and thank you very much for your wonderful talk and happy birthday. I am impressed by this concept of impartial care and universal love, but it sounds to me a little abstract, and an important question today for care today. So I am a psychiatrist, you know, is the possibility to take into account the singularity of each individual with its own subjectivity, its own mind, for example, an artistic mind and emotions. And so is it possible in the Mozi's philosophy to take into account the singularity of each individual and perhaps each relation? It is very important, the relation, for example, between two people. It is very specific to two people. I have not the the same relation with my wife and with others. So how take into account the singularity?
Thank you so much, Arnaud, for being here, first of all, and for this very good question. I think that in a time of poverty, that wouldn't be possible, because if Mozi wanted the best for the greatest amount of people, I think it would be very difficult to take into account the needs, the specific needs of each individual. I believe his ideas are so much centered on survival mode, abandonment of luxury, and that he wouldn't be so specific with the needs of each individual per se, unless we can have a good amount of fortune to feed everybody in society. And that was not the case at his time. For instance, music and arts are very important for an individual's development, and Confucius stresses it. Confucius talks about the importance of music. Confucius himself used to play music, and the importance of poetry as well for your self-cultivation. And Mozi does not subscribe to this idea, probably because you are spending a lot of time that you should be working to produce food or crafts that would be useful. Even if we think about the producing crafts, I think Mozi would accept producing a chair, for instance, because he was an artisan, and he developed several tools, very important tools on lances as well. But embellishing that craft would be wrong. So the idea of aesthetics, he would condemn. Yes, someone else?
Katarzyna, I want to ask you something.
Kata, thank you so much for being here, Kata.
Oh, thank you and happy birthday. I didn't know. So I wish you all the very best in the world. And I would like to ask you about the analogy, because, usually this universal law for totalitarianism, it may seem dangerous idea, like in many cases there was utilitarian justification of, many harm. So is it a good analogy like in Christianity, there is this principle that a Christian should not be happy when a fellow brother or sister is suffering, like we should be happy only together when, So is this, in this sense, utilitarian, like it is good for, like we should benefit, be happy from others' happiness, yeah? And also, this idea of universal Christian love, was never realized, of course, but, I think now the analogy is that we much more are convinced that about the survival, yeah, that if we want to survive, we need everybody, we all perish or survive. So is it something, can it be applied to Mozi? And congratulations for the great
talk. Thank you so much, Kata. This was a great question. One of the Mozi's analogies regards a medical analogy. For example, just like a doctor takes care of his patients, an individual should take care of another one. Mozi does not talk much about happiness because it is this idea of love, although that character, that is the same character that we use for the feeling of love that we have for a partner, a friend, or a family member. It was for him, when we read, is about the benefits that we can produce for another person. So this is the idea of love. And that's why it's consequentialist. It's about the result that we can provide for another person. So if my actions generate good results, then it is love. But he has never mentioned about if another person is happy, I should be happy myself, or sad. It is and also universal love is just one of the chapters of the Mozi's canons. So for this talk here, I just use this fragment of the universal love. Juan?
Yes.
Juan?
Okay, thank you. Caroline, happy birthday. Happy birthday. I remember one paradox of afterlife in Chinese tales. It goes like this. There is a father, there is a son, and they care for each other very much. Then one day, the father dies, and at the funeral, there was the son and other friends, and they began to talk. They began to have an argument about if there is afterlife or not. Somebody says there is afterlife. The son says no, there is no afterlife. Suddenly, the coffin began to rise very slowly, and the son was terrified, and then he goes on his knees and says, Father, please don't destroy my belief that there is no afterlife. And the coffin descended very slowly to its place. And that's the paradox. I don't. It's a Chinese, but I don't remember now who is the author. And that was my comment, Caroline. Thank you very much. I enjoyed very much, and I learned too much about Chinese from your talk. Thank you.
I should thank you and thank all of you, because I am having this opportunity to learn a lot from you, and this apprenticeship is being the best birthday gift I could ever have. I didn't know this passage of the coffin. I would research a lot about this because I want to know more.
I will find it and send it to you. I have in some place here in my book. My bookcase.
Thank you so much, Professor Hunt.
My pleasure.
Okay, so I don't know if there are other questions. Jean-François, how are you? Please.
Happy birthday, Caroline.
Thank you.
Feliz cumpleaños. And thank you so much. It was a very wonderful talk. As I know, I enjoyed a lot the concept about impartial care and universal love. And I wanted to ask you about, you'll see, I think his moral statements has influence from auto-consequentialism, utilitarianism, and also there are features from the ontology. There are a lot of prescription about what you should do, what we ought to do, and from that place, his consequentialist derivations are quite deontological also, I think. And I wanted to ask you if, and I also was interested about all of us being subjects in heaven. I found it very, very profound and very beautiful. And I wanted to know if you know about him deriving his moral statement or his moral stance from any spiritual belief like us being subject in heaven, and from that place having to derive a certain moral code. That would be my question. So thank you very much. And kisses.
Oh, thank you so much, François. You're right about the ontology, and also I should thank you because you end up reminding me is another analogical reasoning in what regarding Kata's comment. which is exactly the idea of all under heaven, as he regards heaven as a moral entity and what as an intelligent being. He says that, for example, heaven or the sun shines for everyone, regardless the social condition. So he makes an analogy between the sun making no distinction with the humanist idea of universal love, of impartial care. For the rest of your talk, I ask for forgiveness that my internet stopped a little bit, so I couldn't understand everything because it broke in parts your speech.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you. I want from that place. Do you think he was a pantheist? Do you think he is moral?
Oh, he was definitely a believer.
Okay.
So there was that passage in which I showed in one of my slides. He was comparing fish nets, throwing fish nets into a river when there are no fishes, with the Confucius ideas of performing rituals when they do not believe so much. What was happening with the class of Zhu, of the intellectuals, is that over time they were not perhaps believing as much these ideas. You know, belief was not such an important concern, but the rituals were very important. And Mozi criticizes that. For Mozi, being a believer was very important for your moral actions. Maybe we can compare his ideas with Kant's ideas, because for Mozi, what is important is the result of your actions. So if you believe that Tian, which is this entity, the heaven entity, is a moral agent and is judging you, you will perform good deeds. So belief helps you to be a good person and to practice impartial care, because the heaven is impartial. So he was definitely a believer, and he was criticizing the Mohist disciples for even not perhaps being such good believers as the Mohists. They were continuing with all these very elaborated, rich rituals that were spending a lot of resources. So Mozi is quite the opposite. He was against these elaborated rituals, but was a firmly believer.
Amazing, thank you.
Someone else? Something on the chat?
I put on the chat, in fact, the entry of the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy about Mozi, and which was written by a professor from Singapore University. You can have a look at that.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I have just a short question. So this guy is working at National University of Singapore. He's a specialist of Mozi. And I have a question. My short question is the following. Nowadays, in continental China, people know about Mozi. What is the situation?
Actually, if all know about Mozi, I don't know. But he was admired by Mao Zedong.
Yeah,
we can understand why, because Mao Zedong wanted everybody to be the same, right? At least the idea of communism. Admired by Mao Zedong. but definitely we see all over China temples for Confucius, and not as much for Mozi. There is a movie, a more or less recent movie that I still hope to watch, that was made in China about Mozi. It's called the Battle of Wits. It's about the Warring States period and what we have talked about, the idea of contradiction being a battle. But I haven't watched yet. But if Mozi was present in this contemporary media, I think he's more or less well known. But I have never asked to any person in the street, "Oh, do you know about Mozi?" And his ideas are also quite simple, as we have seen here. They're very easy to digest and easy to understand. So it is also, I think, understandable why for Mao Zedong, Mozi was admired, because Mao Zedong was not very fond of intellectuals, and Confucius was part of this class of intellectuals, whereas Mozi comes from the class of artisans.
I see. I think.
Thank you so much, Ioannis, for the message. Just saw it now.
Yeah, so I think Confucius is very well known outside of China. Not Mozi, not so much. So maybe Mozi is more known in China. I don't know. It's interesting to think about all this. And there is a question by Monica. Please, Monica, you can speak in Portuguese. I think Caroline still understand this language.
No, it's okay. I can speak in English, no problem for me. Okay, because I'm just considering all the guests here. Oh, very nice, Caroline. Congratulations on your speech. Congratulations on your birthday. Okay, very nice. My question is, you're talking about ethos, the ethos of Mozi, and so I'm going to try to make an analogy so I can understand. So in Aristotle, we have the ethos. The ethos has to do with the character, how you develop your character, your virtuous character, by means of education, by means of training and habits, okay? And of course, the state, the polis, the city-state has a lot to do with that, with helping to flourish, all right? The character by tradition, education, and I'd like to know if in his philosophy, in his ethos, the state or the politics or the state also has an important role in making the citizen or the person, not the citizen is not appropriate for Chinese, I don't know, helping to flourish as human beings, okay? And so as to develop this virtuous character, including being friendly, and amorous, and so on and so forth. That's a simple question.
Thank you so much. This is a great question. Well, I think that if he wants the promotion of virtuous people in the positions of power, and also in this sense, he is not a communist, right? He is not against the different, or I would say, erasure of social classes. But he wants the promotion of worthage into these positions of government. He certainly believes that the government has an educational role to play, and vice versa. And so a person to be in the position of leadership should have cultivated his quality for being human, or his personness or humanness in this sense. I think all that you said is absolutely conducive to his ideas. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think now we have a question
Jim?
from Jim Butler, please.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And this is not so much about Mozi, but about technique, because I've heard other talks before where you have gone into the construction of the Chinese characters for certain concepts, and you seem to be able to get interesting information about how things developed from how the characters are constructed. And have you been able to use that? So that's a technique question, right? That's a technique. Have you been able to get good information about philosophical or historical concepts from looking at the characters that way, which is not the only way to look at them. That's part of the that's part of my question. It's, not everyone looks at them that way, but you seem to succeed at it. So I was hoping you could comment a little more.
Thank you so much for your question. Well, it's very kind of, to be honest, I am a native Lusophone, so everything that I exposed here was based on very arduous. It doesn't come natural and easy for me, absolutely not. I had to go into the etymological research for each one of these characters. And you are absolutely right that it helps us understand Chinese thinking when we look back into the etymology, because, for instance, we saw the etymology for the character that we translate as Confucianism, the character Zhu. We saw that it has nothing to do with the name of Confucius. Confucianism comes from the master Confucius. His name was Kongzi, so Confucius comes from his name. But Zhu, it means actually intellectual or literati. And when we see the components, we see rain. So it is difficult to understand for a foreigner why we have the component for rain there. And we have to understand that in the past, since Shang Dynasty, so 600 before Christ, we have these rituals with oracle moons in which they used to perform some kind of divination. And many of these divinations had to do with agriculture. They wanted to know if it would rain, as it was important for them. But they could ask other things as well, like if the emperor should marry this person, many mundane things. Because these intellectuals were also part of this divination practice, we still see in the character for Confucianism the component for rain. But we really have to dig in to understand why. And I think this is one of the fascinating parts of Chinese characters. But it's not as obvious all the time, because sometimes it has to do with the sound. The component does not always have to do with the meaning, but it has to do with how it used to be pronounced.
Yeah, yes, that's very interesting. And there's there's an analogy in English. I hadn't thought of the divination concept, but that really does that does carry a lot of information and help us think about how these ideas were constructed and developed. So there's an English word, the auspicious, which is like a good omen, but that comes from an ancient Roman divination technique that came from watching birds. So the root of auspicious is a Latin word for bird. So, what does that have to do? Well, there was a divination technique. So that's almost a parallel development. That was a very helpful answer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I didn't know about this, but an interesting parallel we could trace is that one of the ideas of auspiciousness, or more closely would be benedictions or good fortune. Chinese like a lot to use bats. Maybe you have seen in bats has the word for bat is fu, and it sounds the same as good fortune. So when they put a drawing of a bat or a painting of a bat, actually they are representing good fortune. So this is a very common technique of using analogies or parallels between sounds and meanings. And this is also very common in poetry as well. We have the importance of parallel of meaning and parallel of sounds.
Unfortunately, either your or my or somebody's internet was bad, and I only heard half of that.
It was probably my internet.
Oh, but if
was this for everybody? Because I'm using.
Okay, so I
was
think
that for everyone?
we are arriving at the end of this session. Thank you very much, Caroline. My cat also liked very much your talk, and he say happy birthday to you. And of course, we thank you for your talk, and we will go on next year with logic and religion webinar. So as I was saying, we'll have a session by mid-January. Still, we don't know exactly the date about the World Logic Day. And Assis, maybe you can say a few words about the session you also already organized in February. Are you here? Can you hear me?
So just in response, Jib, I want to thank you so much for being my teacher, my advisor, and for giving me this opportunity to celebrate this date with so many special people, with all my dear friends who are here. You all have made my day truly amazing. Thank you so much.
All right. So bye-bye to everybody. Have a happy Christmas and end of the year.